Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jenna Yarley. I'm the Realm's development manager. I use she, her pronouns. I'm just going to go over a few logistics before we pass to Kara and the rest of our wonderful panel. So we are in webinar function. You should be able to, if you'd like to use closed captions, they should be enabled and you can turn them on in the CC button on the lower side of your screen. And we also ask you to use the Q&A function for any questions as opposed to the chat function. And if anyone's asked a question that you would also like answered, you can upvote that in the Q&A function. The Realm, we've also, going back, we've also told our panelists that they're allowed to be humans in this space. So if anyone turns their camera off, they need a minute, turns their camera back on, don't be alarmed. If anyone needs to go to the bathroom, they can do that. The Realm seeks to be an equitable, inclusive, anti-oppressive, anti-racist organization. More information on our mission and our values is available on our website, which I will paste in the chat. Those values extend to this virtual space. And if anytime you feel something you experience is not in line with those values, feel free to chat me directly or follow up via email, which I will also paste into the chat. If you, through our Radical Parent Inclusion Project, if you incur any fees associated with caregiving to attend this webinar, please let us know via email, and we'd be happy to send you a reimbursement. I'm joining you today from the traditional unceded territories of the Lenape, and I offer recognition and respect and acknowledge that colonialization is an ongoing process that continues to impact the lives and lands of Native communities. I want to acknowledge that in addition to the physical land we occupy today, the platforms, technology, and equipment that we are using consume resources that are based in physical lands and are not universally accessible to all people and all communities. I'm also sharing a link at the end of my chat for those who would like to learn more about the spaces we occupy, and I invite you to take a moment to name where the unceded territory of where you're logging in from. And without further ado, I'll pass to Kara and I'll post all of those things in the chat.
Thank you so much, Jenna. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for being here today for our conversation all about stage management. I am so thankful to Playwrights Realm for putting together these great events and giving us all a chance to learn more about aspects of theater that might not always be in the spotlight. And I am especially thrilled they asked me to lead this conversation with this incredible group of stage managers today. Before I introduce those amazing people, I will introduce myself very quickly. Hello, I am Kara Kaufman, lifelong New Yorker, avid Yankees fan, and stage manager. That last one has been a bit tricky during this past year as the in-person theater has pretty much come to a pause during this pandemic, but I am still considering it my job, even though I haven't been able to do it in quite some time. I have been stage managing all around New York City for the past 12 years, mostly in the off-Broadway and off-Broadway worlds, and I have been super lucky to work on a plethora of exciting new plays. And so fortunate that a number of those have been with the Playwrights Realm, which has been an amazing artistic home for me. But that's enough about me. I have 4 other incredible stage managers on this call with us. So panelists, can you go ahead and turn your cameras on so we can see you? Hello. Yay. Hi, everybody. Oh, I'm so glad you're all here. This is great. So I'm going to, one at a time, ask you to introduce yourselves to our audience here. So let's start, we're doing alphabetical by last name. So let's start with Jonathan on the spot. Tell us where you're coming from on Zoom here and what attracted you to stage management.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Castanien. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm also calling you from the unceded land of the Lenape people in what is now called Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And what drew me to stage management? That, you know, in high school, I came from like a teeny tiny theater department who maybe had 13 people at best at a time. So there was a lot of need to help support in a lot of different ways, and I fell into a leadership role. And as I was leaving high school, I knew I didn't want to act professionally. And my drama teacher suggested I either do dramaturgy or stage management because I was really big on researching whenever I was in a show, and I had no idea what dramaturgy was. So I did stage management, and it just kind of kept snowballing after that.
That's awesome. I think it's kind of like me. I was like, what am I doing in theater? That's a thing I can do. Amazing. I love it. Thank you for that. And let's go next to Ross then, if you're with us. If not, I will skip to, there you are. Hi, Ross. Let's go to you next. Tell us the same thing. Where are you Zooming from and what got you into stage managing?
Absolutely. Just as a heads up, I think I'm dealing probably with some connectivity issues. I live in Los Angeles, California, and I'm in currently in Atlanta, Georgia, on a show at the moment. So I've been traveling all throughout the day. So my hotel Wi-Fi might not be too fantastic at the moment. But the thing that got me into stage management is exactly what I'm getting to do here. It's the opportunity to be able to contribute to artists in ways that otherwise I'm not sure I would have been able to. And in my time, and as somebody that grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, I'm very deep in the arts, particularly into music, and didn't really have much of the ability to be able to perform it on my own. So this was my way of being able to contribute across a massive different ways. So that was the thing that really drew me to stage management.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I feel that. I relate deeply. Great. Okay, so then Peter, on to you. Same questions. Where you're from right now and what drew you to our wonderful industry of stage management? Well, I think you're still muted.
Peter Royston, he, him. I am on the land of the Lenape. If anybody needs a visual description, I am a white man with short brown hair and glasses and a white and black shirt and a black feather bow tie. I came to stage management actually as sort of someone suggested I take it. I had a choice of taking going to see theater class in college or stage management class, and I was kind of pushed to try it. And I first did not take to it and disliked it and was like, what the hell am I doing? And then by the end of it, I loved everything about it, and especially the relationship with the people, the actors and the directors, and seeing all the pieces come together and just knowing about everything at all times. I like to know why things are happening. And as a stage manager, that is your job, to know why everything is happening and to be there as that liaison for all of the elements. And I have been a stage manager ever since.
That's amazing. That was the thing that attracted me to, was I realized I got to be a person who saw everything that happened in the entire process. And that was just the coolest thing in the world. That was what kept me hooked. Okay, last but not least at all, Dee, tell us all about it.
Hi. My actual name is Danielle, but because my first name got mispronounced so many times, I got annoyed of having to correct people, which is why I go by Dee. I go by she, her pronouns. Currently born and bred New Yorker. I'm the resident stage manager in Baltimore, but I am here in Jamaica, Queens, New York, where my parents are, where my heart is. I came into stage management. If you had asked me 20 years ago, I would have told you it was because I didn't want to be an actor and I didn't want to be told what to do. But I say 20 years into this business now, I think the whole reason I got into stage management was because I didn't want to be front and center. I wanted to do theater. I wanted to be able to contribute to my community and make sure that I felt like myself as a human being, and also to other people, that I like contributing what I can. I love being able to put something on stage, no one have any idea what I do, and just see the reaction from audiences, because I'm bringing art to those that may not be able to see it. And no matter how you see art, whether you love or hate it, it is still giving you a reaction. And I guess in life, I just like seeing people react.
Heck yeah, that's something I miss, being in a room full of people reacting to art together. So I can't wait for that to come back for sure. It does feel a little bit like the puppet master doing things just by magic.
But friendly magic and supportive magic, because that's what we do as stage managers.
Yes, loving magic, the best kind. And which is actually a pretty good segue into the first thing I want to talk about a bit, which is what we do. Because many people, even a lot of people who may work in theater or see a lot of theater or just love theater, don't know what a stage manager actually does. I mean, I grew up in New York City as well, so I grew up going to theater all the time. I loved it, but I didn't even know that was a job that existed until I ended up similar to Jonathan in high school, and they needed people to help backstage. So to that end, I've had this experience a lot, and I imagine all of you have as well. You tell somebody what you do, and their response is, "Oh, that's so cool, you're a stage manager. What is that?" And when that happens, what is your elevator pitch answer that you give them? Let's start. I'm gonna cold call. Let's start with Peter. Tell me what you would say.
I'd say I am responsible for everything at all times, and that that's usually the basic like one-line pitch. And then I would say that we are there from through the rehearsal process, through the production process, and then we help facilitate to make sure that that the show is smooth running and that it's consistent each night. And we are aware of all the elements, and we are responsible for all the elements. So if anything is out of whack, people come to us.
Yeah, that's a super great summary, and I think speaks to the breadth of the tasks that fall under our umbrella of a job. How about you, Ross? What do you say as your elevator pitch?
Yeah, I try to sum it up by just simply saying that it's my job or my great pleasure rather, to facilitate, track, and maintain the artistic integrity of a show as designed by brilliant people. I mean, that's the way that I look at this job, and that's one of the reasons why I get so excited about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, the brilliant artists aspect of it hit me really early too. And it's such an amazing gift to be able to, as your work, support their work. So neat. All right, Dee, what's your elevator pitch?
I have to be careful of how I say it, but also like very real at the same time, because you want people to go into theater, and there's not a lot of good stage managers. So again, if I started answering the question, I would say I have the job that nobody wants. But I would also follow it by saying, I am the job that feels like it's most satisfying, because I am responsible not just for what happens on stage, what you're looking at, but if you rewind back a little bit further, I'm not just responsible for sending out information, but it's also my job to make sure that people feel comfortable and safe in their environment so that they can create art, so that we are able to enter our jobs but not consider them our jobs. It's just like, it's a play. We're not curing cancer, but we're able to do what we love because we do it over and over again, because it not just gives us pleasure, we want to give others pleasure as well. So I may have the job that nobody wants, but I do have the most satisfying each night.
I think that's beautiful. And I have the same. I mean, the friends of mine who have worked in theater and do understand what I do have that reaction a lot of like, ooh, I do not want to do what you are doing. Does not sound fun to me. I think it does take a certain personality type to enjoy it. But if that is you, it is, as you say, one of the most satisfying things you can possibly do, in my humble opinion. Okay, Jonathan, what's yours?
Oh gosh. I would say we're the main communication point on the production. We speak with everyone on the production and disseminate information to all parties involved. And we're there to help facilitate the process and help fulfill the needs of all the artists involved, and ensure that the production can be everything it needs to be and can grow in the way that it needs to grow.
Yeah, gorgeous. That's a really good encapsulation as well. I think generally, if I'm distilling it in one sentence, I think I usually just say, yeah, it's my job to support all the amazing artists in the room to create their art in the best way they can. Which, if I'm being a little biased, I think that is an art in and of itself as well. So, we are artists who support artists. Go us. Amazing. So that's great. I think that led me to the next thing I want to talk about a little bit, which is one of the interesting things about stage management. And I think one of the reasons it's kind of hard to encapsulate in a sentence is that it is kind of, in some ways, three separate jobs that happen over the course of a long process. Because the things you do in rehearsal, the things you do during tech, and the things you do during the run of a performance are just all extremely different. And it's one person or a team of people doing all those things in sequence. So first of all, that takes just a lot of takes a lot of different parts of your brain. But for all of you, I'm curious what you think, what stands out to you in each of those separate discrete phases of the process as the most important or the most interesting thing that is our team's job in rehearsal versus tech versus performances. And you can speak to some or all of those, whatever is inspiring you. Dee's nodding, so I'm going to you first, Dee.
I was like, let me just remember. What was the question? What do I like about it? Or
what do you think is most interesting or most important that you do during all those different phases?
For rehearsal, I like watching the process come together, because before then it's just words on a paper, and it's great to be able to see not just somebody speaking those words, but understanding why they're saying those words and helping them to remember, helping them realize that what they're saying is important. And during that process, it's not just giving them the confidence that we can all do this job, because most of the time they're new works. It's not something that's been done before. You know, everyone's done Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. You can kind of copy paste that. So right. But it's about, my favorite part of it is being able to help them develop what it is they want to put on the stage. Tech, that's my time. That's my time to talk to all the designers I never get a chance to talk to be able to get their vision on the stage. And so it makes sense to me, so that when I am watching it every night and I am maintaining it, I know what I'm supposed to see. It's not what I would like to see. It's not my personality. It's not my desire as a stage manager. Oh, well, I want to see them do this differently. It's my job to maintain the integrity, what the director did, what the actors did when they came and they started, to tech, mold that into it. And during performances, as a person now, I never get a chance to watch TV. So when I'm doing the show, I'm not just calling the show, calling the cues and making sure everything's running. But my favorite part is, like, I get to watch my favorite show over and over again. Most people, they get a little tired of doing things repetitively, but at this point where we are with COVID, I appreciate consistency. Being able to watch my show over and over again, knowing that I helped facilitate that, you can put that on repeat, DVR it every night.
That's awesome. It's true. It's the best series going in town. Yeah, I think there's something really beautiful about that too. The beginning of the process, rehearsals being about discovery and kind of building. Tech is about understanding and refining, and then performances is letting it go, like letting it run, letting it move people and have its ripple effects into whatever it's going to do in people's lives. That's great. Peter, how about you?
I think I'm very sensitive to energy in the room and the space. And so I think the rehearsal process is where you really get to develop those relationships and sense how people come together and how they work together. And I think that gets further, that expands in tech, and that that is obviously the stage manager's time, and you have to advocate for what you need to make sure that everything is smooth and that you can still maintain the integrity and the energy of the story that you're crafting. And I think that's still, like, that's another aspect of the process in a different way. And I totally agree with the in the being able to see a show and maintain it, and sensing what happens each night, but also feeling the intricacies of the differences and being aware of, like, being able to catch when something's about to happen or could happen, and just being there for that part of the journey that no matter how much planning you do, will always shift and could always be a little bit different, and being there for that aspect of it. And I love riding the waves and navigating the show throughout those three different components.
That's so true. I mean, yeah, live theater is a joy because you never quite know exactly what's going to happen, the best laid plans and all. But I also think that the continuity of what you said about, it's all about people. And that is so true of what we do, because you're right. Every show is going to be different because the personnel are different, and everybody from the actors to the designers, everybody in the room works in a different way. So it's a lot about fielding those energies. And that's kind of one of the things I think about creating an environment everyone can do their best work in. Definitely involves knowing what everybody just needs, which is its own kind of magic. But yeah.
We're all magical beings, as I like to say.
That is so true. I love it. Okay, Jonathan, how about you? What do you think about the three different phases, as it were?
I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with what's already been shared. And I think just to add to it, during the rehearsal process, I think an important thing to keep an eye out for how the changes can have a ripple effect. So keeping an eye for detail in the bigger picture, and, like, thinking 3 steps ahead of, like, well, if we cut this scene, how is this person going to do a costume change, or how is this person going to get from stage left to stage right? So keeping an eye for detail in that way. I think in tech, it's also just about practicing flexibility and fluidity and just, giving a energy of calm and assurance to everyone involved, especially if things are changing hour by hour. And then for performances, I would add that I think it's important to help foster like a positive environment for everyone involved, especially because if you're on a long running show, you're doing the same thing over and over again. You just want to still help create that energy and that spark within the group so that it's a joy to come into, the space and like do the show and do it with these people again.
Yeah, I miss that. It is that. It's this amazing dynamic that you kind of both see forming and kind of help direct, I feel like, because yeah, especially if you're going to be ASM or stage manager backstage, you are so much a part of the fabric of how that group moves and the choreography of that, both emotional and physical. Super lovely. And I think something else I want to highlight that you said is the incredible duality of having to do the attention to detail thing while also doing the macro big picture thing, that's hard. And it is so true because yeah, you have to notice whether that mug is set at the corner of the desk or in the center of the desk. And at the same time, you have to know whether, that mug being cut means in a later scene when it gets thrown at someone, you have to find a new prop for that. That was not a real example. I've never had a mug thrown at someone in a show, but I'm sure someone has. Yeah, Dee has. There you go. See? All right, Ross, do you have thoughts on this? Oh, I think I lost. I think I might have frozen there for him. Okay. Can you hear me, Ross? Did I freeze for you? Maybe.
Sorry, y'all. I can't. Are you waiting on a response from me? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I can, believe me, I have dealt with spotty Wi-Fi all day today, so I can 110% relate to where you are. But yeah, I was wondering if you had thoughts on this before I.
Yeah, so for me, I look at the focus during rehearsal of being time on task. So how much time can you spend on task, right? Trying to get everything set, tracking the details of the details. Tech is all about trying to divert as much time as possible to both time and task, right? Trying to maximize the amount of time that you have and the amount of work that you can get done during that time. And then when it gets to the performance, for me, it's about replicating the task in time. So making sure that you're replicating it, performing it the same way, getting all of the technical elements on point and replicable as you go through. So it's just a different focus for all three of those different phases, even though they very much all encapsulate and utilize the same sort of, from my perspective, two different elements, but the way that they sort of fold, mix, match just varies depending upon the process. So the attention to detail has to be there in terms of guiding a process through all three of those phases.
Wow, that was incredibly succinct and well thought out, and also the most mathematical explanation of stage management I have ever heard. I think we need to make a t-shirt with time and tasks and various mathematical symbols, and that might be our new club logo. I love it. Thank you for that. Amazing. So I think, as we've sort of already alluded to a bunch of times in talking about the wide range of things that we do, I always like to ask this because I think it's fun. Because we have our hands in almost every aspect of the show during every phase of its production process, sometimes we have to do some stuff that I would describe as unorthodox, or you could just say weird. What is the oddest thing that you have ever had to do as part of your job on a show? And I'll answer this first. I'm gonna let you guys all think about that, but I will tell you mine, which Jonathan was there for this, which is I had an actor in a show who had to have a full back tattoo as part of his character. And because we didn't want to make an actor actually get a full back tattoo, that seemed a little invasive of his personal life, we did temporaries, but the kind of temporary that lasts for like about a week before it starts looking pretty fake. So every week, our lovely wardrobe person had to redo this tattoo, which was, That was a job she was good at. That was fine. But the problem was before she redid it, we had to remove all the vestiges of the old, whatever it was that was sticky on his back. And because you only had one person doing wardrobe on the show, she had no time. And because Jonathan had 5,000 props to deal with, he didn't have time. So I was like, well, I'm here. So once a week, my actor would have to stand there, like bent over his makeup counter while I rubbed baby oil all over his back with a rough cloth to try to remove the last of his temporary tattoo so that we could reapply it. There are some videos of this because he found this hilarious. It was so weird and also so fun. Like, what a great moment for me and this wonderful actor to every week just do the old baby oil back tattoo removal. So that's forever mine. If anyone's come up with one, who wants to go? Raise your hand if you have one. Oh, Dee, what up? Tell me.
All right, I've got two. I forgot the first one, but I remember the first one. I worked on a show where we had so much blood, except we were moving from like downtown to go further downtown. So like the actors weren't around all the time. So they were like, however shall we test this blood test? So I've got smacked in the face with blood. I've had to test blood. I've got punched in the back with blood. And it's like, guys, isn't this great? There's a video of me cackling, losing my mind. But one thing, it wasn't over the course of the run, but one of my favorite things during rehearsal, baby stage manager. And I was like, all right, guys, it's time to start rehearsal. And I remember distinctly the director was asking, hey, is it cool if we put some black stuff because the person wasn't supposed to have any teeth? And so he was like, hold on, popped out his teeth. And then somebody else in the room, one of the other cast members, they're like, oh my God, popped out their teeth. And then the third person was like, yo, and I was like, guys, if we could just please take a moment, everyone please put their teeth back in their mouth so we can resume rehearsals. That would be greatly appreciated. So I never thought I'd have to say, can everyone please put their teeth back in their mouth before we can proceed with rehearsal?
Okay, that's incredible. I have never said that, but now I hope I get to sometime.
But also 3 people in the same room. It's like dental community. What's up with the veneers? What's happening? They don't seem to be lasting if they could just pop it out their mouths.
That was some kind of vibe happening in that casting session where just everybody without teeth was just nailing their auditions. That's good. Amazing. Ross, I think you had one ready to go. Hit me.
We did a show at the Gaffin Playhouse called Skin Tight, and at the end of the show, everybody had dinner and had to eat a little bit of dinner like as the lights went down, essentially. So we would but before the show, we would cook 6 plates of chicken paillard, which is like flattened chicken, on a hot plate in the green room, as well as some broccolini, some carrots, things like that. And we would have 6 total meals of this, and the actors would be able to take maybe a bite of all of it. So we had to prepare all of these meals for them to take a bite literally as the lights were dimming down, not before, but as the lights were dimming down, they were all able to take a bite. So we would give the food away at the end of the night and things like that. But that was always just sort of one of those things about like, why are we doing this? Do we have to do this? But yes, we did.
So were you actually cooking the food or were you just warming up the food?
Full on cooking it from cutting up the chicken to pounding the chicken because you have to flatten it, right?
Yeah.
So we had to do all of that, to seasoning it, to grilling it up, the whole shebang, for 6 bites at most. One of our actors was vegan, so he didn't actually eat the chicken either.
But his character couldn't be vegan, so he had to have chicken on the plate.
Yep. Apparently.
Okay, that's great. I did a summer stock production once of Streetcar Named Desire, where it's food, but one of my fellow interns / ASMs volunteered to cook the pork chop every night for this, and I was like, I will not do this because my worst nightmare is undercooking a pork chop and giving my actor something serious, like food poisoning wise. So I was like, blessings upon you, other friend. Please make the food and I want no part. So my job was to then microwave it so it wasn't cold before he ate it. That I can handle. That's really good. Oh my God, I love it, Ross. Peter, Jonathan, anyone have one? Peter, yeah.
Yeah. One of my first experiences, I was in charge of the fried chicken for a production of Killer Joe. And it was a very special prop, and all the actors had to eat it. So I had an intimate relationship with several different vendors because there was a lot of notes about how fresh it had to be when it arrived on stage at that time. And of course, and then there's also an aspect of the show where there's a drumstick that is shoved down one of the characters' throats that we wash. And so there was also notes about, and we had several backups. And so there was a favorite chicken drumstick, but that was, talking about fried chicken was like a huge part of my life for several months.
It's amazing when you become an expert in something that random, just for the purpose of a show. It's great.
I have lots of feedback if you ever need fried chicken.
I might hit you up for that afterwards. I love good fried chicken. Okay. Note to self. Jonathan, you have one?
All right. I had to think real hard on this. Okay, so I did this like off Broadway show called The Video Games. That was based off of the Hunger Games, but with video game characters. And it was very niche, very fun, light theater. And I was at ASM backstage, and I had to do like Foley effects. So like sometimes when a character got like killed brutally, I would have to like do bubble wrap or like hit a pan when they got hit with something. But like during tech, the producers were like from California, and they like were in New York doing this. So they were having like difficulties with things getting shipped on time. So for a long time, I didn't have a pan backstage or something metal to hit for a Foley effect. So this producer, this poor man, I don't know if he had slept or showered in a while, but he like took his shoes off and was like, just hit my shoes together to do the effects. And yeah, that was one of the amazing parts of tech, was using this man's shoes who had been running around the city to create fake hit sounds for these characters.
An amazing thing that I hope you never have to do again.
No, I will never.
That's great. I will give honorable mention to one more that I think you guys will enjoy, which is that I was backstage helping out at a benefit for a theater company, and it involved a bunch of actors singing songs. And at one point, one of the actors there's a gag where he left stage and needed to come back really quickly wearing very tight pants, and with what we ended up being an eggplant shoved down the front of them for a joke. And he was on mic the whole time he was backstage having to make this quick change, like singing and bantering. But it took three of us to do the quick change, and my job was to put the eggplant down the pants. So I can forever say that I had to shove an eggplant down the pants of a Tony-winning musical theater actor while he bantered about having an eggplant shoved down his pants. It was fun.
We have to sidebar. I have a story for you afterwards that I cannot share.
Fantastic. So you can see stage managers doing all kinds of weird stuff you never knew they did. Okay, so we also referenced earlier when talking about what we do during all the phases of a show. A couple of us mentioned maintaining, which is a really important part of our job that I think a lot of people don't realize, that once opening night happens and the director has moved on to other projects, we're kind of the eyes that are left from the rehearsal room who know how things are supposed to go. So it does fall to the stage manager to make sure everybody is still keeping to not just the literal script, but also the figurative script of how the thing has been designed, the timing, the staging, everything, to make sure that the play still works. And I think we've all had experiences where we've had to say, hey, this was 5 minutes longer today. Let's not do that. But because therefore we often have to give notes to actors, what is the most unusual note you've ever had to give during a show to keep it on track? Yeah, yeah. Ross?
I think I have one. I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing of it, but it was during a storybook ballet, which you can imagine gets a little, let's say, ethereal. I had to say something along the lines of like, with where you were standing, your fins were lit very well, but the gills over on the opposite side, we couldn't really see. So when you talked about them, there was something about them specifically that was being referenced in the text or in the moment. It wasn't text, obviously, but in the moment. And we were supposed to see that like the fish was hurt. but the gills were not lit. So this was a big problem because we couldn't see that the fish was hurt. So it was just a weird note that I never thought I was going to have to give, kind of in line with what you had mentioned earlier about like, I never thought I was going to have to tell these people this thing, or rather Dee was mentioning like, I never thought I was going to tell you something, but I never thought I was going to have to give a fish a note. And that was
That's awesome. I should keep a log of these things I never thought I would say.
Yeah, I wish I had more of these verbatim, but that one I remember pretty well.
That's pretty great. Gills. Keep your gills lit, everybody. Did you have one, Dee? You were looking like you might.
I was okay. It's a short but long story. So I did the show The Christians, and there's a choir that comes in. And the show that I when I did it at BCS, we're heavily involved in the community. So we had 3 different choirs rotate. It's actually pretty awesome. Like it involves the community to be able to take part in a show, and then they invite their friends and they can see what's happening. I digress. We also had these huge jumbotrons, and on the jumbotrons in the church, you would have the captioning. You would see what the lyrics were of the song. In our very last choir, our third one, I had this woman. She can see the jumbotron, and she would get this particular lyric wrong every single night. So I emailed her and I was like, hey, XXX, I just want to let you know that the lyric is actually da 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 and not this. Then she came back and said, actually, the lyric is la 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 la. And I was like, you know what? That's funny that you say that because you've never said it before. If we could from here on out just stick with that lyric, that'd be great. But it was just sort of like, she looked to the jumbotron, said the same word incorrect, corrected me, and was rude about it. And then I had to come back. Did I come back rude? No. But it was like, hey, friend, since you know what it is, let's try to actually say that. So
that's fantastic. It's like, well, we could just look at where it's written, I suppose. Maybe we could do that together.
Every night.
That's great.
And on matinee performances.
Every night and twice every weekend. Yes, that is great. And that's a big thing, is having to, of course, give notes to make sure the thing stays the way you want it to stay, but also being kind, because everybody receiving the notes is also a human trying to do their job. But yeah, it can be challenging in moments to find that balance. I agree. Peter, do you have one?
I mean, the basic note seems very simple. Like, please don't forget your gun. But the circumstances around that note were a little bit more interesting and nuanced for the show. There was for the show, like, the guns are locked up in a lockbox. They're a weapon once we load them up and they get checked. So there's a very few things that you're allowed to do, or the actor is supposed to do before they get on stage. But this one actor left, and the top of the show is that they're supposed to be behind the couch, nude, but they had forgotten something and they left. So we were in a blackout for quite a few minutes. And I heard the actor crawling behind the couch while I was still on stage, because I was waiting, because the actor wasn't there, so we couldn't start it. That was my job, is to say that we're ready or we're clear. And so that was the note. Please remember your gun and please go to stage.
That's something you never thought you would tell somebody. Like, usually you would say, please don't bring a gun in here. But no, please don't forget your gun. That's great. I don't have one that good, but I will say at one time in an attempt, I was doing an amazing play that was extremely dense text, that was really beautiful, but the actors were trying so hard to really feel the text that we gained like 8 minutes over the course of a couple of previews. And I didn't want to be like, talk faster, because that's not a good note to give. It's not helpful. The only way I could think of to explain to them, to just like play the intention with the word instead of saying it and then doing it, was I described the text as a souffle. And if it got too heavy, the whole thing sank and the audience couldn't enjoy the fluffy dessert. I literally said that to a bunch of grown-ups. And actually they all, to their credit, were like, oh yeah, that's a good call. So sometimes weird things really do work. Jonathan shaking his head in disbelief. Yes, I will.
Effective one, honestly, I'll say. I thought that was very effective.
Thank you. I was sleeping, tossing and turning, trying to sleep. You're like, what can I say? It's not just speed up, y'all. It worked. Okay, that was amazing. I loved all of that. This is, we and have so many good stories just being around these shows for so long. The weirdest things happen and they're always fun. So thank you for sharing all of that. I want to change gears a little bit here. I don't know who exactly is on this amazing Zoom with us today, but theater can be kind of a difficult industry to break into sometimes. It's not always obvious how to go about, even if you figured out the job that you want and somehow you've learned that that is stage managing, in which case, yay, welcome. But if you figured that out, it's still sometimes not easy to know how to go about being a stage manager. So I'm wondering if you all can tell me and also anybody out there who might be looking to break in as a stage manager, how you got your first gig in the field and also what advice you would give somebody who is looking to go that route. Yes, Dee.
I started theater in college, and I was lucky enough to have a job off Broadway, and like this job morphed from me being an usher, just being a dresser, to being a crew member. But I remember going for the interview, and I knew that the interview went well. It was amazing. I knew that I got it, but I didn't hear anything. And you're just starting out and you don't hear anything. It really does something to your ego. You're just like, I'm not good enough. Why didn't they call me? And the best advice I have to take was from my mother, because she was like, go there, put yourself out there. Don't take no for an answer if you know that answer is yes. And I was like, but how do I do it? She's like, you know where the job is? Go sit out there. I sat out there. The person who I interviewed with was like, Dee, here you are. I tried to call you. I had one digit wrong on my resume.
Wow.
If my mother hadn't encouraged me, because when I was in high school, I was studying to do something in science. I wanted to be an obstetrician gynecologist. And then I saw a play and then my life changed. So she said, you would not have changed your life, changed the course of it to just accept a no when you know the answer is yes. So I encourage anyone wanting to start out, especially BIPOC, don't take no for an answer if you know the answer is yes. It's already a hard industry to keep yourself going and motivated, because sometimes those doors open, they close. The job that you take either pays none at all, like, hey, we'll give you some good, we'll recommend you. Like, those little jobs mean something because you don't know who's looking at you. You don't know who thinks that you have something inside you to contribute. So if you think your answer should be yes, take it. And if you hear the answer is no, find out why. Find out what it was or why you weren't chosen for something. Take a little bit of reflection upon that. No one likes to take criticism, but like, if you want to know how to be better, you have to accept it. You have to learn it, and you can either let it bring you down or build you up. So in this industry, especially now, especially when it's was a business of, it's who you know to get you where you are. At this point, put yourself forward. No one owes you anything. Nothing is promised to you. You want it, you earn it, you fight for it.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to get it. I'll get down on my soapbox, but It's a hard industry, and it's not something easy. And it's not something typical of like, well, if you go to school for this, trial, error, do it. Let it be your passion. Let it drive you. If you enjoy the money, let it do that too. But art specifically, we have to fight so much harder than anyone else to get that money, to get that notoriety, to be able to do your passion. You have to fight for it.
Yeah. And something else about it is, of course, with the exception, and you have kind of one of these exception jobs, but for many, many stage managers, it is just gig to gig. It's amazing if you land a regional gig where you are the resident person who gets to do a lot of the shows, and those gigs, that's when you should definitely find a way to have someone say yes to you for that, because that is awesome. But just the number of times that we have to look for jobs is crazy, because someone who doesn't work in something that is gig based, you could be at the same job for 2 years, 5 years, a decade, your entire life. But if you're constantly having to hustle out there to find the next thing after the thing you're doing, it is exhausting and it is intimidating when you don't hear back. And it can be really hard. But I think you're so right that it is, if you care enough to be pursuing this career in the first place, then you care enough to be following up and finding out either that you didn't give the right contact number and actually got the job, or why you didn't get the job and what you can do to get it next time.
I mean, if I can leave it, I steal the quote from Scrubs. Anything worth having for is worth fighting for.
Yeah, that sums it up. That's great. That's really good. Does someone else have an inkling to go next?
I would say, I mean, definitely when I was younger, something that, I mean, a key scene in Sister Act 2 is when Whoopi Goldberg says, if you wake up every morning and you think you're supposed to be a singer, then you're a singer. And I've always known that I knew very young that theater was where I was supposed to be, and how that changes and how that fluctuates and figuring that out is an ongoing journey. But I know what I'm meant to do or what I'm meant to be. And if you feel that way, if you feel like you're meant to be in theater and to do something, then you should keep doing it. If you love it, you keep doing it, and you'll find a way. And yes.
Heck yeah, inspiring. It's yeah, it's true. I can't tell if one of you is unmuted. No, I can't see it. Jonathan, Ross, do you have anything you want to add? Ross, I see.
Oh, I can. Jonathan, do you have something though?
You go first.
Okay. Thank you. My biggest thing is to just not be afraid to let people know what you want. I started doing theater because I started doing theater because I couldn't play sports anymore, and that was really the thing that stopped for me because of injuries and things like that. But when I decided I wanted to become a stage manager, I told everybody. I told people that had no idea what a stage manager was that I wanted to be a stage manager. I told people that knew exactly what a stage manager was. I told stage managers I wanted to be a stage manager. And because I never wanted to take it for granted that somehow or another, if I didn't say what I wanted, then people would just know. And that's just unfortunately not always the way that it works. And so I always encourage people to say what it is that you want and tell people what it is that you want. It's okay to do that. I think we're sort of taught that it's not okay, like because we're not supposed to talk about ourselves and we're not supposed to indulge in that way or whatever. But I mean, a lot of the gig to gig part of this, which is where a lot of us start in stage management, does come from being able to, for lack of a better phrase, market yourself, right? Make yourself marketable, make yourself inexpendable when you get to a certain place and things like that. Like you have to have that. So it's okay to have that. I think people would call it an ego, but it's not the same thing as being egotistical. It's okay to have an ego that says, this is what I want and this is why I deserve to be able to do it. That was the way that I got my first stage management gig, was that I actually ended up interviewing for an open position at a regional theater where I was going to college that was in lighting. It was like a lighting internship or something like that. And in that interview, I said that the reason why I'm interviewing for this is because, yes, I can do the lighting stuff, but I want to be a stage manager. And so I want to get on run crews so I can work closely with stage managers, listen to them call shows, watch the way that they work with people. From that, instead of hiring me as an intern in lighting, they hired me as an intern in stage management, which wasn't something that they had before. So never be afraid to let people know what it is that you want, because what you want matters and you need to be able to share that, and it's okay to do so.
That's an awesome story. I think you're so right that seems like it's frowned upon to talk about what you want. That seems selfish in some way, but truly, it's right. I mean, that is an amazing experience you had where being really forthcoming created an opportunity that didn't exist. That's a super great lesson for all of us, because I mean, I'm not immune from this either. I find it very intimidating to go in and ask for something, anything around in my whole life, not just around stage management, but it is especially important where it comes to your career and something that you want to be doing and should be doing and can be doing. Tell everybody. And I think everyone's referenced so far, this is so much about it's a people industry. So telling the people that you meet around theater and even not around theater that you want to be doing this job, who knows who they know that just said they needed a stage manager. Yeah, I mean, there's the thing about manifesting what you want, but in a less sort of, in the ether version of that, literally telling people that you want a job, they might know of a job. So never hurts. That's great. Thank you, Ross. Jonathan, did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really about everything everyone said. I feel like I've done one or the other at any given time. It's also, I found that the more people I reach out to and meet and like build relationships with, the more they're likely to think of me for a position or a job. It's sort of like what Ross is saying, and Dee and Peter, you know, you have to go after what you want. You have to say what you want. You have to tell people what you're trying to do. And luckily, in a lot of ways, there's some good folks in this community in theater where they're generous. They're willing to help people start out because they know exactly how hard it is. Because like I started in California, I was out of college, and I got my first job because of a professor who wasn't even my stage management professor. He was like theater management, and through him, I was able to get connected to a theater. And then coming to New York and essentially restarting and like just trying to meet as many people as I could, and you know, having the confidence to say what I want, but also knowing when to like be genuine about it. Like people can spot when people are being disingenuous in this industry. It's not, and one thing I'm gonna say not to do is to don't backstab people. Don't backstab your peers. Don't be that sneaky snake in the grass trying to get the work, because word will spread. People will know. People do know. So so you know, just be true, be confident, come as you are, come with the bright intentions, and people will recognize that.
Yeah, that's great. It is. It's such an amazing group of people that are also different. Coming a bunch of lovable weirdos. I say that with love. So really, coming at it with your own lovable weirdo self is the best energy to have. I could not agree more. Thank you for that. I think that's all such good advice. So if anybody listening on this webinar wants to be a stage manager, you should do everything that everybody just said, because it is all the right thing to do. And now, okay, so we look back a little, looking ahead. So theater has been mostly on hiatus. I know some of you are on a project now or have been doing projects, which is awesome. But certainly the full gamut of theater being open and working in the way that we've experienced in the past is not here yet, but is on its way. And I think when it does return, it might look a little bit different. And my question for all of you is, this has been a time for me, and I think a lot of people I've spoken to around theater, for some reflection while we've been, for whatever amount of time, out of the workforce of our own industry. And in this reflection time, have you come across in your mind any practices that we have long considered to be industry standard, or just something that we always do that we're used to, that you hope change going forward now that we've had a chance to pause and possibly reset? Yes, Ross.
I have a list of things. No, I mean, I think that the conversation around 10 of 12s is a very valid one. There's a large conversation right now about eradicating, getting rid of. I like that I use the word eradicating, because that's what it feels like.
Can you say for everyone what that is, if they don't know what 10 of 12 is?
Absolutely. So 10 of 12s are these large tech days during the tech week before you open up a show or move into previews, where you're working 12-hour days with a 2-hour break. So you're working 10 out of 12 hours. There's some nuance to that with equity votes that can reduce that meal break and things like that. But for lack of a better phrase, it's a 10 of 12. And so it's a very long and arduous day, especially depending upon where you live. If you live in New York City and you're doing 10 of 12s, you have to take public transportation home. Certain things can happen within that. There's a safety aspect to it. In Los Angeles, for us, there's a big safety aspect when it comes to driving before or after, particularly times where you have 2 10 of 12s back to back, which can happen based on how many times it has already happened in a single season. But of course, it's equity, so if you just pay more money, you can also just do it as well. So the theaters do have that option. And then there's also, the times where you have 2 10 or 12s within 3 days. It's a very tiring and arduous part of the process that is sort of being challenged right now by stage managers, actually, in particular, but also a lot of actors and actors' equity members. So that's a big part of it, is that I'm hoping, and I know the theater that I work in, I now actually work in artistic at the Geffen Playhouse as a part of artistic leadership. We're eliminating the 10 of 12s altogether. Like, we have already taken on that commitment, and we plan to do that. And it's still having the option should we, take on a large show and we feel the need to be able to do it. But the idea is to not have them. The other thing that I will add is production meetings via Zoom, I don't think are going anywhere. It increases the accessibility for out-of-state designers to be a part of production meetings at at an easier rate. It increases the amount of shareability as well in terms of our ability to be able to share screen and do all of these things, as opposed to doing it via a conference call line and a phone is just sitting in the middle of a table somewhere and everyone's yelling over it. Like there are things about that I do think get a little bit easier, and perhaps it means people end up actually staying at their desk a little bit and doing, we're going to not go into, once we get back into person, we're able to go back into person in about June 15th, middle of June, but we're still going to do all of our larger meetings, even from our desks, via Zoom. We're not going to all gather in a conference room somewhere, even though most of us are going to be vaccinated, if not all of us vaccinated by that time. So I think that some of those things that have turned virtual are going to be a part of it. I also don't see streaming shows or the implementation of live streaming as well as multimedia going anywhere. I think that those are going to become very important design elements, as well as accessibility efforts to increasing accessibility and democratizing theater at a rate that we haven't seen before. So those would be my big things.
Well, yes, those are awesome. Yeah. I could both the aspects of safety and sanity in terms of these insanely long work days. And yeah, of course, being able to provide accessibility is huge. And yes, why were we not using Zoom? Why did we use conference phones when there was video calling? I don't know. I did a show 2 years ago where we had conference calls. Why? We should have thought of this. This is the one blessing of this whole moment has been, you could do stuff on video.
Right.
Did anyone else have anything they've been pondering? Yes, Dee.
At the start of the pandemic, I was pregnant. Here she is right now. This is Tegan. I think, and I'm very grateful for it, because I am a person, I may not necessarily like to work, but I like what it means when I work. But there's also something to be said about being exhausted. And I am very happy about the aspect, as Ross was mentioning before, 10 out of 12, we at Baltimore Center Stage, we're doing the same thing. But what I really hope that we get out of COVID is the respect that stage managers are people too. We are human. We work just as hard as everyone else. We are there probably 2 hours before and we'll be there 2 hours later. So I think I'm learning to appreciate and value my time. I'm appreciating and valuing and learning to enjoy time with my daughter, because we can't keep being driven into the ground. It's a nice realization over the year to realize we can do a good job without running ourselves to the ground and forgetting that we are human and that there are other humans in our lives that we want to spend time with. So I think in this time, I really hope that it transpires that, an actor can get sick, they call out, an actor gets injured, they get call out. If something happens to a stage manager, we have lives too, and that needs to be recognized. And we need to have the forefront of saying, while we do love our job, while we feel like our job can't happen without us, it's going to have to, because we're humans and we have to be able to have the same mental capacity as anyone else that's working on a show. We are human, we are kind, we need to be gentle to each other as well.
I think it's a really good call. Working in New York off Broadway a lot, speaking to the calling out thing, I've never done a show that's had understudies. So that kind of mental pressure on people to say, well, if you're sick, that's fine, you can call out, but then we're canceling the show, that's really hard. And that's something a lot of people are not willing to do, which is why we see people performing sick and performing injured. And for a stage manager in particular, where, even it's rare that off Broadway, especially, I'm never going to have an understudy. So it does feel like we must persist. And I think that's something that's important to think about. How can we find ways that people, like any other job in the world, you can call out if you are not going to be able to perform your job safely to yourself and others?
I mean, like, there's something also to be said as stage managers. When an actor walks off stage, they can go to the bathroom. We as stage managers, we're like, I gotta make it through. We have got to get rid of that mentality of like, we've got to make it through. it's not, there's no amount of money to say that you should bend over backwards where you cannot exist.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable and it needs to change.
I think that's really well said. And just on a practical level, this having been, you know, a pandemic, I think we've seen the effects of what happens when you show up sick to work. Because if you show up sick to work and everybody gets a common cold, that's unpleasant. But if that common cold ended up being coronavirus, as happened in several companies, I mean, pretty, you know, widely noted, some Broadway companies got absolutely decimated, not decimated fatally, but people were just, everybody got sick because you're in such an environment that you're so close together that the second someone has something, we all know this, everyone gets it. And we've come to be like, oh, well, okay, so we're all gonna end up getting the cold, but it doesn't fly when the thing that everyone can get is possibly a fatal disease. But it also makes us think further, why should we all be getting a cold? Maybe we should all just stay home and take care of our bodies so we get better faster and don't get everybody else sick. Just a thought. Peter, Jonathan, did either of you have any musings?
Oh, Jonathan, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. I completely agree with everything. I I just keep saying that. We're all on the same mind. That's the best part. Like, I love that accessibility was talked about. I love like getting rid of 10 out of 12s. I went to college, my training in college didn't even do 10 out of 12. So when I came into the workplace, I was like, what in the hell is this? Why do you need to do this? What? So I'm for that. I'm also for like, let's do a 5-day rehearsal week. I don't need 6. I think for me though, I really would love more pay transparency for jobs. Like, I want to know how much I'm gonna get paid when I interview. Let's not waste our time. And why are you embarrassed? And then I think just abolish unpaid internships, apprenticeships, fellowships, whatever ships. Get rid of them. We don't need them. Stop exploiting people. Pay them for their work, and you know, pay PAs properly. Give them the contracts. Don't use a PA as an ASM. Yeah, those are all my feelings.
Yes, people who are working should be compensated fairly for their work, and including people who are called interns are still working for you and should be paid as such. Could not agree more. Peter.
Yes, I think yes and to everything that everyone has said. I think that the stage management team is really important, and that I think there's a lot of stuff that doesn't really have real answers, and I think for each company, each show should be talked about and discussed. And I think still during this time while we're opening up, that those ideas about access and inclusion and how to allow everybody to do their best job in the most effective way is important. And it's not as simple as just mandating. It's different for each person and it's very individual. I do think at the start, one thing that I'm also trying to model is talking about access, your accessibility needs. So at the beginning of a rehearsal process, I will always be going, hi, my name is Peter. My preferred pronouns are he, him, his. I'm wearing a white and black dress shirt with glasses, and I have short brown hair. I have cerebral palsy, so I have less mobility in my right side, and my speech gets slurred when I am tired. So that will manifest. If you get a weird email with some errors, that's what that is. And please go around the room and let us know if you have any access needs. If you would prefer to talk to me outside the group, please do. And please know that this is an ongoing conversation throughout the process.
That's wonderful, wonderfully said, and something we should all keep top of mind because, yeah, theater is so much about inclusion and bonding and creating connections that we should start by doing that amongst ourselves and making sure everyone has the access they need and is comfortable in the environment they're in. I want to say one more question here, and then hopefully I can grab one or two from the audience Q&A. But we're kind of moving towards this anyway, talking about unpaid internships and talking about accessibility needs. There's a lot that I think we all think our industry can do better at. And during this past year, in addition to the pandemic, there has been obviously a lot going on in our country, change issues of equality, of inclusion, of social justice that have touched off a lot of conversations across many industries. And I'm wondering from you all, one of two things, you can answer either, both, or neither. What do you think the role of the stage manager in the room is to support those efforts of inclusion, equality, and social justice? And or what can our industry be doing to help stage managers be hired and compensated and work more equitably and inclusively? Both issues I think are important, and things I think we've kind of been, So whether it's unpaid internships, most people can't afford to do that. So that is a barrier to entry we don't want to see. Whether it's hiring practices and making sure we get all kinds of different voices and faces and personalities and people in the room, that's something we definitely want to see more of. So yeah, does anybody have any thoughts on that? Very broad question. Dee.
Over the past year, I had a baby. We weren't doing theater, but what I did feel was such an integral and such a wonderful thing was that people started reaching out to me and asking, hey, do you want to speak at our class? Do you want to speak at our class? And at the end of those classes, I always offer up my time. I always offer up to say, like, if you're interested in this and you want to talk further about it, by all means, talk to me. And I have to say, the people that have come to me are BIPOC and they're female. Like, it's a very male-driven community of stage managers. So I am always going to help anybody that wants to expand themselves, because again, it's just as Ross said before, if you want it, you ask for it, and you don't be afraid to. So if I'm literally offering you my services, I can't force the knowledge upon you. I want you to come to me. So being that open and allowing someone access free of my time, I'm not going to ask you for money for educating. I'm trying to give on to you. I want you to come to me. I want you to see that this is a business worth doing. It's a business worth fighting for, because it's not easy. Where I came from, when I did my internship almost 16 years ago, I was the first African-American female stage manager that had come through my program. So for me to just be like, well, go find it yourselves. No, I make myself available for any race, any sex, however you define yourself. If you want to learn, I'm here for you. It's the desire. You can't force anyone to want to be educated. You can't force anyone to learn. I think it's our duty for those that are leading the path to open the doors, to say that if you want to learn, if you want to see where I've been, I'm letting you have the opportunity to learn from me. Please take it. If you don't, I can't force it on you. But I think those that are in our position now, we should allow ourselves to be open enough to say, hey, those that want to learn, those that want to be where I am, or at least attempt it, come on over. It's about making yourself more open with the time that you have. And time is, if you're working, you have kids, you have 3 other jobs, it's hard, but if you can make the time, someone's going to appreciate it. So I feel like just making ourselves available as mentors, teachers, just an ear, I feel like that'll open more doors.
Yeah, well said. That's amazing that you do that. You're right. Time is one of the most amazing things you can give, and the gift of your experience helping others. Yeah, that's really great. Yes, Ross.
First of all, thank you for this question, because I think this is a fantastic question and a great topic to bring up, because oftentimes we spend so much time talking about stage management in like these types of formats and things like that. And this is one of the things that we've seen change over the time of pandemic, as well as reckoning with all the things that are going on within the country. We're now having conversations about human beings all of a sudden who happen to be stage managers. So thank you for keep maintaining that and keeping that open. But the question around the idea of like, what can stage managers do to support efforts of inclusion, diversity, equity, all of that. I'm just using those words, and all of them have their own little weird definitions. But the theater, it's the theater's responsibility to create that, right? It's the producer, it's the artistic directorship. It's the theater's responsibility to create an environment both inside of itself that is welcoming and maintenances when necessary, and then also creates an environment that people externally want to come into and that welcomes them I think somebody mentioned earlier, it was Jonathan who said, come as you are. That becomes such a huge part of what theater's responsibility is. So for me, it's about the theater making that available to the stage manager just as much as it is about wondering as a stage manager, what can you do to support it? But for the stage manager supporting it, exactly what Dee's talking about in terms of making yourself available and being the vessel, I love coming and speaking to classes and into theaters and groups and things like that, because to be a person of color and the vessel through which information travels to other people of color and others, there's an attachment that happens there that doesn't happen in other circumstances that is fundamentally very important. I didn't meet a Black stage manager until I was about 6 years into stage managing. When I joined the union, Actors Equity, in terms of being a Black man, a Black cis man, there were only maybe about 15 of us within the 50,000 person union. And of course, the union has grown at that time, and so has the population, but not notably. And so seeing me, seeing Dee, seeing Jonathan, seeing Peter, seeing all of these people who offer something that is accessible from a forgotten population or an unsung population or an untreated population is remarkably important. And so I think that by making ourselves available, that helps as a stage manager, by paying attention and having sort of your ear to the ground about what people are feeling and how people are feeling. Is this space actually brave? Is this space actually one that maintains and upholds voices and people, right? And if it's not, speaking up and taking that to the theater, if that theater has a DEI committee, if that theater has an HR representative that isn't also somebody that's employed by the theater, then taking those things and not being quiet about them, I think, becomes the other part of it, but the onus has to be on the theater. The onus has to be on the organization. Stage managers oftentimes coming in as contractors shouldn't really be on them to create that, but speaking up on behalf of it and speaking up in support of it, regardless of how scary that might sound, sometimes is exactly what needs to be done.
Yep, that's beautifully said. You're completely right. Yeah, it's the institutional side that has the onus to create that kind of environment. But as the person on the ground with their ear to the ground and with their around the people in the room every day with that kind of relationship, you become a conduit. I think we become a conduit sometimes for those kinds of concerns that are a little more sensitive. And I think that's a really important part of what we do as well. It's build those relationships in the room so people can really express how they're feeling, and hopefully we can advocate on their behalf when needed. Yeah, gorgeous. Jonathan.
Yes. The thing that I'm just like a little tired of hearing from specifically like our white stage management colleagues is that they hire looking for skill, and that's all they think about. My problem with that, and I recognize that certain parts of this country, maybe it is hard to find a BIPOC stage manager where you are that's union. I recognize the difficulty in that. But in places such as California, New York City, if you hire looking for skill and the best person for the job, and our teams are looking very white, very cis male, are you really? Like, how? Statistically, it makes no sense. So, it's if we're speaking directly about stage management and their efforts, and I'm pointing mostly to our white colleagues, is putting in the extra effort. Do the work, do the legwork. Don't just turn to the same 3 people you always hire. Not to mention you always hire them in the same level of the team, so like they're not moving upward. Think more deeply about your hiring and what you're doing and how the team best serves the production, right? An all-white SM team may not fully serve a show of color in the best way. That's just how it is. So yeah, I just really hope moving forward, like if you want to really push for these changes, you know, you gotta do the work on yourself too. And you gotta practice what you're saying and doing.
Yes, I agree. And Dee has a follow-up.
I will also add on to Jonathan, he's absolutely right. We're not hiding. We're not under a rock. We're not going, oh, I hope you find me. I hope you think that I'm sorry, but in this day and age, if you can Google anything, BIPOC stage managers. If you come across a resume and you see someone's name, I'll tell you, every single one of us on this panel, before we began, I Facebooked, I Googled, like, it's not hard. No one is hiding. You just have to look for it. You just have to look for us. We want to work. It's not, oh my gosh, what spell must I cast? No, we're here. We're present, not hiding.
Yeah, it's a really good call. And those of us who are in positions to be able to make hiring decisions would do well to keep all that in mind, because you're right. It serves both us as humans and also all of our shows and productions to have diverse groups of stage managers. Yes.
Yeah, I think like a lot of the things that we're still like working at and that we think that should be better are big shifts in culture. But then the other thing that I think gets sidelined is always like that it's too much, where it's too hard. And but yet each person on this panel, I'm sure, or at least I know I have a call to lead by example and to speak up for my colleagues and friends, and to speak up when something is right and wrong. Part of the job of the stage manager is to sense, where to ask. If something feels off and somebody is triggered, where if you sense something is wrong, you ask, and that there's no harm in asking, and to have a more open discussion and communication. Because these conversations, and as we move forward out of this pandemic, it's going to be rough. It's going to be hard. If people are actually having uncomfortable conversations, they're going to trigger things. It's not going to be easy. This is going to be uncomfortable. And that's what people, if we really want to change, that means that we actually have to change what we do and who we see and what we do. All those things, you actually have to change. It actually has to look different. It has to be different, and we have to do different.
Yeah. Amen to that as well. Those were all such good answers. Is there anything else anybody want to add on that topic before I maybe see if we can grab a question from the audience?
I will also add, I don't know who I heard say it, but it was a celebrity, and he sort of ignorantly said, like, I have nothing else to learn. The most ignorant thing you can possibly say. As a stage manager, you are constantly having to learn. You know, when before all this started, it was like, all right, this is how we do rehearsal. But things have changed now. And if you don't follow along with what has changed, not just for like, well, it's not old dog, new tricks. It's like, if you want to be in this business, keep up with technology, ask around, hey, what are you using now? Like, the only person stopping you is you.
Yes. That's a really good point too. There's a whole thing we didn't talk about is technology, which leave that for a different panel, because yeah, things change fast these days. Anybody else have any last thoughts they wanted to add to that? No. Okay, well, that was all amazing. Thank you so much for everything you shared. I'm looking at the Q&A right now, and I will say the question I'm going to ask the question that has the most upvotes. So something we did not talk about very much that I think is really important to stage managing is a relationship with a director, because that is somebody that as a stage manager, you work extremely closely with throughout. So someone asked in the audience, Candace asked, hi Candace, what has been one of your best relationships with a director and what made it such a good relationship? A useful question for both stage managers and directors. Anyone has something that jumps out that they would like to share? Ross, go for it.
I can start, and I'll start partly because like right at the half hour, I think I have a meeting that's going to start. So I want to make sure that I get to answer in the final question. But myself and this is part of it, was that this person also became a very dear friend of mine, but it's a director. Her name is Patricia McGregor, does incredible work all around the country. But she did a couple of shows at the Geffen Playhouse Skeleton Crew, as well as an original Nat King Cole musical that we did called Lights Out. And that has been sort of the standard by which I look at stage manager and director relationships. Whenever I work with another director, I'm like, oh, I hope that we get to Patricia levels, which like will never happen again outside of Patricia and I working together. But it has become something that I hold so dearly and hold so fondly because I was given a voice in that room that you're not usually given. And I don't mean as somebody like making artistic decisions or making artistic recommendations and things like that, although there were times where she would turn to us at the stage manager's table and ask, what do you think we should do here? Like, do you have any ideas? Do you have any contributions? Things like that, just looking at it from a logistics standpoint, but also just the general humanization within the room to where it wasn't our job titles that walked in the room before us, but it was instead us as human beings. And so that portion and that allowance of humanity is something that I've taken from her as a director and tried to fold into my approach as a stage manager and as a manager as a whole to always lead with the person first. And that's just something that will stick with me for the rest of my career, rest of my life.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's when someone sees you as a person first, it changes everything about the dynamic in that relationship and in the room in general. So that's for any young directors or any people in the world, that's a pretty good strategy to go by to form meaningful relationships, people you work with. And yeah, I agree too. I've had experience with directors when they turn and include you in a conversation, because I think we've all been in rooms where I was in a room literally one time. I was sort of a PA level person, and the PSM turned to me at the beginning and was like, "Our table, we don't speak. Like that's their conversation, and we don't join in." And my job, I hit the floor because that was not my experience of stage managing. It's not how I run my room. But that was difficult. Whereas rooms where we're all just humans in this room who all react to the beautiful theater we're creating, and everyone should be included in that. That makes a huge difference. I think you had something, Jonathan, you wanted to say.
Yeah, I think when I've had the best relationships with my directors is when they value who I am and value my work. They understand what I'm doing and that I'm working with them and not against them to help make it happen. Yeah, I think that's been the best for me. It's just like having that rapport and being able to understand each other's work and support each other and actually collaborate. Like stage managers are a collaborator in the room for you, and they can help you pull off a lot of things if you work with them.
Yes, extremely well said. Dee or Peter, did you want to throw out and answer that?
Yeah. I think that it's not just like I've had some really wonderful experiences with directors and some experiences that were much more challenging, and I think it also just goes to that aspect. I think that was echoed like before, is that I think it's about the people, and so like one person can really affect an entire production or a show if you sense that energy and if it's not working. And I've been a part of those shows where everybody is in the room and part of the show because they want to, and it matters and it means something to them. And so I think that's where that dynamic comes into play. And so I don't know if it's so I'm just trying to speak about a more global aspect of it.
So good. Yeah, Dee.
I have the best relationship by far, and I will sing her praises if anyone ever gets the chance to work with Rebecca Martinez. You are so blessed. You are so lucky, because I feel like anyone in that room, if something was wrong, could go up to her, say what it is, and she wouldn't try to make a solution by herself. Because when people try to do things by themselves, the chain of communication breaks. So it's like, hey, Dee, I like feeling included. I mean, that's why I did it, was because I want to be part of that art. So not only when you're including me, not just because, oh, what can I do on my schedule, but it's like, hey, this human being is having trouble. What can we do? And I have to say, the show that she and I worked on, one particular person, they were having a rough time, and she wasn't like, yo, get it together. She was like, what can we do as a community, not just stage management, not just the director, not just the cast? What can we do to support you? And it wasn't like we're all at a standstill. It's just, we're humans. We have feelings. We get up earlier, we stay later. Like, we're not just this person that bumps out your report. We have opinions. We it's not just a matter of like, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what it feels like. It's like, you're human. Let's all come to a solution, which is pretty much what everyone said. But just reiterating that we're humans and we're smart and we have voices. Let us speak, let us contribute, because no answer is a dumb answer. It's just the ones that are not heard that are stupid because you didn't take the time to listen.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And all aspects of our jobs and lives. Super good advice. I think we're pretty much at time here. So yeah, Jenna's coming back to to end our fun.
I'm so sorry. This was such a great discussion. I want to thank you, Kara, and thank you, all of you. Ross had to jump off to go to a rehearsal, typical stage manager. And thank you to all of our attendees. We have a few more community programs coming up geared towards both audiences and artists. So I'm throwing a link to those in the chat. We have another of this series, Making Theater With, focused on dramaturgy on May 26th. And I'm also throwing a survey in the chat for if you want to give us any feedback on this panel. And that'll also be, the survey will also be in your email that'll hit your inbox tomorrow. But thank you all for coming, and that's all we've got tonight. Everyone have a nice night.